This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Recorded on Tuesday, October 22nd, 2013, in St. Louis, Missouri. This Agile Life, Episode 21, No Estimates. Welcome to This Agile Life, a podcast about what it's like to be agile in the real world. Hello, everyone. I'm the host of This Agile Life, John Sextro, and joining me today, my single, solitary co-host, Mr. Jason Tice at Tice Thoughts. Jason, how are you?
Doing well, John. It's been a long time, so my bad there, but it's great to have an opportunity to chat and see what all's going on and see where that takes us.
Well, it has been a super long time, and it's not nearly all your fault, Jason. I know you've been busy, but we've also been busy in general, and it's been hard to get everybody together on the podcast, but here we are once again back, fighting through the pod fade, me and Jason Tice.
Yes, and so I have crazy ideas, John. So as I mentioned, things I've thought a lot about since I was last here and learned about is this whole idea of gameplay. So right off the bat, if you're game, I have an activity for us that we could do, and it's a think on your feet activity.
Oh, I am standing on my feet, Jason.
Well, you are standing. You are lucky. I am sitting. I threw together a recording studio in about 15 minutes before we got started here. So, in typical Agile fashion, waiting to the absolutely last responsible moment to make a decision. So the idea of the game here, it's actually kind of a modification of a game that's called Turntable. It was developed from Dr. Roger Greenaway. And this idea is that I want to challenge you to think the first things that come to your mind from things that you might have done today that relate to Agile. So, and the idea of this is just quick guidance, quick thoughts that hopefully our audience might hear things and be able to apply that to challenges they may be facing on a day-to-day basis. So, in the spirit of gameplay, I'll give you a second to start thinking, and I'll go first. So we'll go back and forth, see if we can do 3 or 4 of these. So, right off the bat, John, I want to say that one of the elements for a successful Agile transformation is ensuring that you have techniques for proper and proactive expectation management. And we messed up tonight because you're out on Twitter last night saying that Amos is going to be here, for this session, and Amos and myself are going to go at it, and Amos isn't here. So not good.
I said
Don't
this?
do that. Don't do that. Yeah, you could respond, or you could tell me what you're thinking.
Okay. I don't remember having said that. Maybe I was like ambient tweeting or something.
It's on Twitter from last night. Look at Twitter from Monday evening. Anyways, going on.
We'll double check that.
What you thinking about?
What I did Agile-wise today was I worked on grooming our backlog.
Good. That's good. That's simple. All right,
Yeah.
I'll go.
Okay.
So here's one related to this podcast tonight, and this is free advice for everyone who's out there. Conducting remote meetings and collaborative activities is hard, like this podcast. So learn to do this where John and I are not working in the same room. We're separated by a distance, between us. There is a huge payoff if you practice making sure your AV gear works, learn how to adjust it, learn how to calibrate it, and don't save that for the last minute because it helps you communicate better with those that you're working with.
Can I challenge you?
Sure, go for it.
How is that Agile?
So the idea here is the discussion or advice for people that are doing Agile, challenges they might have that maybe they have or they haven't thought about. So if you're coaching and you're having to coach or work with a team with different work locations and you want to have that whole team approach and you need to bring people together, don't always assume that your collaboration equipment is going to work the way you think it's going to, and or see what you need to do to get feedback to make sure that the people on the other end can get the full experience.
Okay, I understand. I have one then in that case.
Okay, go for it.
My bit of advice. One more. Okay, my bit of advice then is to set a definition for what a story looks like when it is ready to be worked. But what are the constituent things of the story that need to be there, that need to exist? Some bar, some line in the sand that says we need all of these things before we can consider a story ready to be worked.
Got it. And actually, that's a great segue into, I think, what we kind of discussed we were going to talk about tonight, which is some follow-on questions from some of the things that you mentioned in a recent presentation with the St. Louis Agile Link group about different ways to estimate stories. So I have lost track of where we are in the game, so I think I might have owed you one more thing that I've been thinking about. Should I roll it, or should we move on?
So you went first and I went last.
You went first, and we did 2 each.
We each gave 2 so far.
Want to do 3, or are we done?
Yeah, let's do 3.
Let's do 3. So my last thing, it's a learning area for some, and it's something that actually I was talking to some folks about today in various contexts, is a concept about games. And it's this idea that this concept from the Agile Games community, that there's what they call the game after the game. And this is where you might do an activity in a training session or in a coaching session, which is designed to demonstrate a concept, but understand that that's not the end of the activity. And what's really needed is a very effective debrief session after that shared experience to ensure learning occurs. So sometimes folks just think about the game and they're like, okay, I see people playing with Legos, and they don't get the value that provides because they don't understand how there's a follow-on activity that ensures learning occurs.
Oh, that's a good one. And that's an excellent point, too. Let's see. My last one then, Jason, will be, I mentioned having a state that in which you define what ready is for a story. And that was my last one. So this one I think will be role overloading. I think that a lot of teams struggle with role overloading. What we mean by role overloading in this context is the whole team approach to working as a team, right? If you look at the sports teams analogies, there are individual contributors that have particular positions. In some sports teams, more than others, there's specialization. Like in football, there's a lot of specialization. In a game like soccer, there's less specialization. You have a lot of people that kick the ball with their feet and one person that you can use his hands, right? I think in software development teams, the ones that I've been a part of anyway, the ones that struggle tend to have more self-imposed specialization where everyone has a belief that I can only do one particular thing and it's somebody else's job to do the other stuff. So what I would like to encourage people to do is try and migrate closer to sort of a soccer team where there's more people that have all of the same sorts of skills and can backfill for one another and can pick up the slack on the team if some particular area gets overloaded or if people are gone, etc.
Yeah, that's a good one. And knowing the acronym that's out there that's floating around related to that is the whole concept of the T-shaped people, and how you want to have that generalizing specialist mindset where you're kind of the jack of all trades, but not necessarily the master, and certainly not the single point of failure for one key activity the team has to support. So, neat way to reflect. So the free advice I'll provide about the game, especially playing this way, if you ever want to try this in a team setting, and or even just as a team exercise to do it, kind of a quick talk game, or again, this is called Turntable from Dr. Roger Greenaway, is just look at your email or look at your social media feed and take the last 3 things that you email people about, and you have 3 topics.
How do you use this, Jason, or how have you used it?
I've used this as a way just to kind of get people thinking, and even to your idea, John, about trying to keep everyone focused, working as a team towards a common goal. Is everyone really thinking and fully engaged and understand what that goal is? More often than not, you sometimes find environments where some level of fragmentation has occurred just because people may have wandered elsewhere, perhaps because they don't have a clear definition of what success is for the team, or just because they need a little bit more guidance, to come back and really support what the team has been asked to do.
Do you use this as a game for like a retrospective, or do you just use this as maybe a fun thing to do to have a conversation during the day, or just to break things up? Or how have you been using this, or how do you foresee people using it?
I've used this activity in probably nearly all contexts. There's a few similar kind of quick think activities that the speaking group Toastmasters endorses that are kind of like this. So it really is designed to say, okay, tell me the last 3 things you were thinking about, and then tell me why you were thinking about them. And then there's a discussion to have. I mean, if you're just working to become a better speaker, obviously there's a challenge there to say, yes, I need to talk, in a coherent manner about that. But in a team sense, it is really a function of seeing, does a team have a strong enough definition of what their success criteria are so that everyone naturally stays focused on the goal, or is there a need to strengthen that definition of success? Cool.
Hey, Jason, before we go on to another topic, I'd like to ask you about something you said while we were playing the game.
Go for it.
It particularly sparked my mind and piqued my interest because it was about the whole team approach thing. And you mentioned the T as the letter T-shaped person.
Yes.
Was that it?
Yes.
Can you tell me something more about the T-shaped person?
T-shaped person. Yeah, I guess I kind of learned that as just a different piece of terminology to really talk about the role of the generalizing specialist, and that's the idea that on a team we have roles, and if you practice Scrum defines specific roles, but really a role is not necessarily and really shouldn't ever become tightly coupled to a specific person on the team. So ideally, you have people that can support all of the roles the team needs to be successful, but at that juncture, you don't have a single person who always has to do a role at a certain time. If you think about what that looks like, and the reason they call it a T-shaped person, imagine yourself standing up as a person. You kind of sit there like you're doing the chicken dance, and you pop your elbows out, and you make the letter T. Well, what the T represents is that as an individual and as a member of the team, you have a broad basis of skills that you can use to support what the team needs to do to be successful. However, within that, perhaps you have some level of specialization, which kind of represents your trunk, which are the things that as an individual, you bring some level of expertise to the team. But again, working together, everyone's a T, and everyone can support the combined workload the team needs to complete to be successful.
I think I understand now, and I think that's a great explanation. If I were to say it in a fewer words, I guess what you were saying is the T-bar part is all of my skills, my broad range of skills, right? I have lots of skills, maybe Java, Ruby, Agile, project management, estimates, all these things. Those are like all of my T-bar skills, right? So hopefully I have a really long list of those.
Sure.
And then that the vertical bar that is the up and down body. The core body. That's my specialty.
Yes.
So it might fall underneath one of those, and maybe Agile, I'm really strong, and so that's my core body is in that particular thing.
Yeah, and even like within the context of the podcast here, we each bring kind of different things to what we talk about. And I mean, for those that don't know or don't remember some of the banter from, I'll say earlier in this calendar year, earlier in the year of 2013, my background's in process alignment, metrics, enterprise reporting, enterprise architecture. In the past, I have done development, but that's really not where I'm focused right now. So, you guys, like yourself, John, Amos, if he was here, you guys got that tech thing down, and understand that working together, we can all really support the creation of business value for customers. And that's an awesome thing to do.
Yeah, we used to joke with Jason, and we used to call him Mr. Big Enterprise.
No, I think I called myself Mr. Big Enterprise. I think you guys just ran with it, but and Mr. Big Enterprise is still around. So, okay, so I want to go on and I want to talk about Agile. Can we do that?
Yes, Jason. I'm very glad. I'm also very glad to see that Mr. Big Enterprise is still around. I think a lot of people.
So Mr. Big Enterprise has some enterprise questions about Agile Link. So
I think a lot of people maybe thought that Amos killed you, Jason.
Oh, really? No. I just got sequestered to go do other things, which are interesting. I learned a lot. So
sorry, you wanted to talk about the presentation from Agile Link. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for those that may not, for a little bit of context, for those that may not be from the St. Louis area, there's a professional group that has formed earlier in 2013 in St. Louis. It's called the Agile Link. Stands for, John, you're going to have to tell me here. It's Learning, Innovation, Networking, and Collaboration, Link, L-I-N-C.
Yes, I believe that's right.
Should have wrote that down. Actually, it was plugged on this. John plugged it on the podcast earlier this year. Anyways, they've got the group off and running, have had bi-monthly meetings or every other month meetings since going back to April. And actually last week in mid-October, John gave a presentation there about relative estimation. So the thought here was I took notes, tweeted about a few things during the presentation, which I may or may not have agreed with. And for the benefit of those who either aren't from St. Louis or who weren't able to join us at the Agile Link meeting held in October, thought we would do a little greatest hits here. So John, kind of starting off, what were your learning objectives? So, if we turn the floor back to you and say, for those that missed the opportunity to come to the meeting and hear what you had to say, I mean, the top 3 or 4 learning objectives that you wanted to share with the audience at your presentation.
My top learning objectives were, number 1 was to teach people or to remind people and to drive home with people that estimates that we provide are nothing more than an educated guess, and that they cannot be used to plan the rising and setting of the sun or the solar and lunar eclipses or the passage of time of the sun through the sky. They are simply a guess as to how long something is going to take. And as such, second learning objective, Jason, was that the estimates themselves have very little value or a small amount of value compared to many other things and activities that the team is charged with doing and creating. And then the third activity, I guess, or my third learning objective, was to challenge people to think about what their life would be like with no estimates, which I think we did. We talked a little bit about that and stirred the pot at the Agile Link there. And then the last objective was to convey the concept of affinity estimation or affinity mapping as a tool for folks to use to greatly reduce the amount of time that they spend in their story estimation sessions.
Okay, so it makes a lot of sense. And day to day, I could see the practical advice is saying that gets developers back with their hands on the keyboards doing developers, gets developers working on code, building new awesome innovative stuff. And what's today's date? Today's the 22nd, for those of you that don't know, of October. And in the spirit of the Apple announcement today, gets you working on all those awesome new innovative apps that, of course, you'll get for free if you buy a new Apple device. So a question that we had in the Birds of a Feather session, it's focused for business analysts after, I guess, your keynote, was really what's the guidance you can provide to project managers and stuff as to how you can, manage a project if you don't have story points and estimates to rely on. So, there's a lot of folks, even from Scrum, who are used to doing traditional release planning, and, you make a burn down chart, you have your sprint planning meeting, your release planning meeting, you set the scope of the sprint, you lock rally or version 1 down with the story points, and then you manage the burn to the end of the sprint. If that's what you normally do, if you shift to affinity map or to affinity estimation, what do you do to manage where you are in the project?
That's a bit of a loaded question, Jason. And
Really? I don't think so. I mean, that's a question that that's people's jobs, John. I mean, if we're saying don't estimate and people go around trying to, manage that and manage risk, what should they be doing?
Well, here's the thing. All other forms of project management, estimation, and setting timelines and in developing release plans, it's all bullshit. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all misdirection and waving of hands. And none of it is at all predictable. So what we're really talking about when we talk about release planning is setting expectations, managing risk, and building a means in which we can discuss, collaborate, and communicate with the product owner about priorities and about when things are needed. Obviously, there are very few, probably zero organizations that can truly say that they are not date-driven. Everybody is date-driven. So if you want to plan a release, you can do a couple of things. You can give me a date, and we can try very hard to hit that date with all of what you want using our Agile, the pillars of Agile to help manage the work and be sure that we work on the highest priority work and that we work in thin vertical slices and that we have a very crisp definition of done and that we do minimal marketable features so that we're producing just enough of what you need so that by your date, we actually deliver working software. Isn't that, in the end, what Agile espouses and what we try to teach people as we're out consulting in companies about how to do this?
I agree, but on the other side of the coin, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of businesses and a lot of stakeholders that put a lot of value on having a long-term strategic roadmap. So this is where we need Amos, because I know Amos loves to talk roadmaps, and we can debate whether a roadmap is relevant, but a lot of folks, and there's a cultural perception about the need to have that type of a long-term vision where you know pretty far in advance. I mean, give it 6-9 months, what features are going to be in what releases. So how do you do that in a no estimates world?
Yeah, you can do all of the roadmaps you want. Every organization has to plan their budget. They have to try and figure out in advance what sort of money the company is going to need or the department is going to need or the project is going to need so that they can plan, right?
I agree, totally.
Organizations need to do that sort of planning just so that they can operate. But then the second part of your question, I think, Jason, or the initial thrust of the question was, what do we tell companies to do in this situation, right?
Totally.
And where I always go back to, or part of the explanation here is that just because before you had a Gantt chart that you had done all of this estimation on and laid out a timeline and said, here are the features that we're going to deliver, here's when we're going to deliver them, that doesn't mean shit. That doesn't mean that you're actually going to be able to do that because your estimates were a complete guess. You tried to be good about making that guess. You tried to be smart about making that guess, but you never know enough. You never have analyzed things far enough to understand all of the dependencies. You can't predict the future. You can't tell what sort of roadblocks you're going to run into. And therefore, doing a lightweight estimate approach or having no estimates at all is quite equivalent to being wrong with very detailed estimates.
It's well spoken. So I'll put it in my notes here.
So for an organization, if an organization is going to spend a lot of time, which all big organizations do, or all organizations do, and I don't fault them for this, what you have to focus on are big blocks in your description of what it is you're delivering. So you have some very, very core fundamental things that you need to deliver. What you don't want to do is drive down to some crazy level of detail about what it is that's going to be within that delivery. If you want to have a new email client that you're going to build and deliver and roll out, okay, you need to be able to target with marketing material when all that is going to happen and what's going to be included. but it doesn't initially have to be at an extremely high level of detail. Start with large blocks. You're going to be able to send and receive email. Of course, this is a very simple example, but you can draw the parallels to your.
No, I like that. And actually, that was one of the things, to give you feedback on what you talked about. The slide that was kind of missing specifically that I might have put in there, and as we imagine, I probably have my own little presentation on Van Noosten's thoughts, is really talking about the risks of current estimation practices. So, because exactly, what you're describing is I've observed to be, so common where an organization may start with these real high-level stories. Maybe they're defined at a level of detail that's too vague to be executed. And next thing you know, team goes into their planning meeting. Team may or may not have good information from a product owner. And next thing you know, the team in their estimation process and all the ceremonies and rituals they've implemented in it, they have gone ahead and re-engineered the stories to either overthink them or underthink them. And then they go put those on the board. They deliver those at the end of the sprint, and the software that comes out the other end does not align to customer expectations. So your whole premise to say, just stop doing that. Focus time on, developing software, delivering it to an environment where you can get real feedback from your customer and use that to guide what you need to do. That's where the value comes from, really going through an agile transformation and really even saying that let's do everything we can to maximize the time that developers can be creative and be innovative and really minimize the metrics or automate the metrics. We can talk about that in a minute, so that you get that data for project management, but you do it in a scientific fashion and you get out of the way of asking developers to do it, and you let developers do what they want to do, which is be innovative, creative, and write software that provides business value.
Yeah,
So,
if you look at the process from a value stream map perspective, one of the lean tools that we use in our toolbox.
This is an Agile podcast. It's not a lean podcast. We're not allowed to talk about lean.
Hey, those two things go very much hand in hand, I think.
No, they're completely separate.
Okay, Tice.
I'll plug that later.
Sure. The Limited Whip Society.
Oh, hint.
There's a lot less value in estimating stories and in release planning than there is in delivering working software. That doesn't mean that estimates for stories and release planning have no value. It just means that delivering working software is of more value. So if you did a value stream map on it, that value stream map would tell you those things are less valuable to the end customer. Therefore, what you want to do is reduce the amount of time that you spend doing those things. And that could be zero, or that could just be less than what you do today. The goal is to get it as close to zero as possible so that you can maximize the amount of time that you spend on the things that the customer, the client, the product owner, and the users really value, which is the working software.
And I couldn't, all devil's advocate and commentary aside, I couldn't agree more. So
great.
All right, so time for the controversial question of the evening. So what I'm going to call the slide gaffe, which, and you can tell me what happened here, honestly. So you had a slide that I wrote down, measuring velocity is important. And I tweeted about it because I saw it. In your deck that you posted on SlideShare, that slide is not there. What happened?
Hey, you mistranscribed. There was nothing in that slide deck that said velocity was important.
All right, so to put the topic to rest, there are those, and there are many that blog and podcast and write books and are still out there today, teaching CSM courses, Certified Scrum Master courses that talk about velocity. And really kind of where some, thought leaders in the Agile space are going is shifting away from these metrics like velocity that are based on, guesses or whatever. What do you do how do you help people understand that? So, if you're someone who came to Agile Link, you heard the talk, you heard whatever we said about velocity, either it was good or bad, we're here saying it's not necessarily the best thing. What do you do with that? I mean, how do you go back and go about your job knowing that things may be changing?
Let me set the record straight on the velocity topic first. So I have the slides up because I knew you were going to you were going to probe.
I think you pulled the slide.
I did not. I promise you, Jason, I did not pull the slide. Not that it's beyond me to pull a slide before I'd publish it, but in this case, I was just too lazy. I just sent them off as PDF to Barry so he could post them on the site. One slide says, for planning purposes, for planning a sprint, what are the things that we need? 2 bullets. A general idea of how much work can be done in a sprint. In parenthetically, I said velocity. And then a set of prioritized or sized stories. Prioritized and sized stories. So the word velocity is on the slide, but it doesn't say it's important unless you are reading between the lines. Tice never reads between the lines, does he?
No, Tice doesn't do that. All right, so I guess slide gaff isn't there, and I will. Only those who were at the Agile Link meeting can go to thisagilelife.com and they can post a comment about this episode. You guys can tell me I was seeing things that evening, or John pulled the slide out of the deck. So,
and I will put the unaltered slides out on thisagilelife.com so people can go out there and take a look at them.
I would like a cryptographic signature to prove they're unaltered.
A MD5 checksum.
Yes, please.
I'll be sure to upload that as well. Now, I did probably in the presentation maybe say that for this purpose, the velocity was important, but I could easily be talked out of that because what I really wanted to convey was just that we need a general idea. We don't really need a hard number. And this kind of led into the whole no estimates thing. All we really need is enough information to give the team the ability to commit. And that was, again, another one of those, I guess, learning points.
Sure.
Was that the whole point of this was really you just need to do enough work so that the team will commit. And that's it. The team is often uncomfortable with their ability to commit without some sort of data. What have we done before? What have we done previously? What's our track record look like? So that they can do a better job of committing to the project and telling themselves, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this stuff done because I know I can do it and I've committed to it. And in the end, I just have to get it done. So
you already brought up probing. It was funny as Amos is not here. Okay. In my notes, I have a probing joke already, which is pretty funny. But if you recall, and actually it was odd, sitting right next to me during Q&A, a participant by the name of Julie, she asked a question I wanted to follow up with you a little bit more on, and restated more or less here. Julie asked, if development times don't spend their time talking through stories in detail in a planning meeting, how does a team come to develop a shared understanding of what needs to be done to meet the acceptance criteria for a story? So where some of the folks who have tried no estimates have gone wrong that I've seen is they say, great, you know what, we don't have to have a planning meeting, we don't have to talk anymore, we can just start working. And that idea of the team having a common understanding of the success criteria for the story is lost, and as soon as that's lost, this idea of having generalizing specialists and having quality software starts to go downhill. So what practical advice would you give to teams who, they want to stop estimating, but they don't want to fall victim to losing that shared understanding of what a story means?
That's a great question. What I think people are missing, because when you go to the no estimates, if you stop doing the ceremony and you stop reviewing, because you're reviewing stories in the ceremony, right? You're looking at the stories and you're evaluating the stories and deciding if it's too big or if it's not written well, doesn't include some basic stuff. So one of the things that you can do as a replacement there is to implement some standards, or if you don't like the word standards, because I know some people don't like the word standards or best practices, we can just call them working agreements. Go ahead, Jason. You're just boiling over.
Why do you? I am not Amos. I love those words. They're beautiful.
I know. I was just.
Matter of fact, I think we should establish a center of excellence to talk about them.
Right. Of course. I was pointing that out for Amos's benefit, though, so he doesn't give me a hard time tomorrow. You set up some working agreements that say all of our stories need a base level of information in them. They have to have acceptance criteria. Maybe your team decides that they want all of their acceptance criteria written in the Gherkin given when then syntax. And that at any given time, you can decide that a story is not ready to be worked and kind of pull the old stop switch on the production line on your software development floor there and say, listen, folks, I went and I tried to work on this story and it's incomplete and it's blocking me and I require your help to help me unblock this and figure out the additional information that I need so that I can work on this if you can't figure it out on your own, right?
Totally. So I had, and we'll attempt to make this one of the more succinct things I've actually said tonight. I took the idea and what you said articulates my thoughts, and that being that I see an opportunity. I know on a prior episode we talked about the invest model and how you can invest in writing stories. Well, from the architecture school, we like to keep things really simple. So I think there's an opportunity to reapply the invest mantra in a simpler mindset and really saying that the idea behind no estimates isn't focusing on time and rituals to, come up with this guess that you talked about. And I think you really helped to clarify what that was and did a great presentation at the Agile Link meeting. But teams should be investing their time in things that really promote, some level of story standardization and scoping. So some teams, they try to right-size stories or, make all their stories the same. So perhaps they have a consistent cycle time. But the key thing is that time should be invested in things that really promote an understanding. And that's all that's needed. The rituals and kind of, the games and stuff for estimating are really kind of, past their prime. And at that juncture, if you want to play games, there are lots of other games to play for other things, but just not necessarily within the confines of story estimate. Yeah,
I agree 100% with that, Jason.
So the last kind of just follow-up question I had, and then to close this out here, was it came actually from the Business Analyst Birds of a Feather session, where we kind of had a little discussion, and I, like you said, I kind of shook things up because we talked about from a transition perspective. So you came to Agile Link, you heard all about not estimating, and doing affinity mapping. You want to get started. How do you get started? So specifically, how do you come up with that first set of affinity groups for your first sprint so that you can actually go into the sprint with some level of confidence that you can be successful?
The question was also asked during the presentation, as I recall. It's interesting that it came up again in the Business Analyst Birds of a Feather.
It came up, and I gave a very shocking answer. I just said, just stop estimating, just go do work. And of course, I went a little crazy on the metrics, which I'll talk about in a minute. Measure cycle time, probabilistic forecasting, all that crazy stuff, which can be a follow-on discussion. But for those that want basic advice to get started, what would the experts say?
Right. Beyond just going to no estimates, my advice is to start small, set low expectations for yourself, understand that your first sprint, your first iteration, or even maybe the first 2 or 3 iterations in sprints are going to be problematic from the perspective of having like stories that you've already completed that you can use to do the affinity estimation. And that's what you require for affinity estimation is a set of milestone guidepost stories that represent and epitomize for your project and for your team what a small, medium, large, extra large, a 1, 3, 7, 9, 13 story, however you do it, what those stories look like as far as your team and your project goes. And that's how you do your comparison. So the first sprint, you really don't have that, right? So what I would typically do in a larger exercise or in a slot where I have more time to talk about this is I take a single story and I plop it right on the middle of the board, and with no expectation of it's small, it's a medium, it's a large, etc. And I tell folks, forget about small, medium, large, extra large, or points, and now just start evaluating, is the next story smaller than the story that's on the board? Is it about the same size as the story on the board, or is it larger? And then put it in one of those 3 locations. And then the next story, you do the same evaluation and give yourself to the point where you get, let's say a small, medium, large, and extra large category going. Then when you've gone through the whole stack of stories, you've got stories that are in 4 columns on your board. And you just say the smallest is small, the medium is medium, large is large, and the last one is extra large. Anything that was too big, you've put way down to the end, and you need to spend more time working on it. But then that's your foundation for going forward.
So the last question, actually, you inspired me. I got one follow-up on that. So, and I'll ask you, since I think you've done more work with the affinity estimation. As you know, I've just stopped estimating, and we say now we just do cycle time.
Of course.
But
excellent.
I could see affinity estimation being taken in the wrong direction by people who say, let's have standardized affinity criteria for all of my Agile development teams. And so you're doing multi-team Agile, and next thing you know, someone says, let's have standardized criteria. Number one, have you ever seen that? And number two, I personally don't think that would be a good practice, but what are your thoughts?
Standardized criteria for what exactly, Jason?
Standardized affinity maps. So the sizing constructs and how this affinity estimating practice doesn't over time erode to where it's just another form of planning poker.
Okay. Just like with measuring the velocity of a team, you can't compare one group's velocity to another. People maybe want to try to do that, but it's just not reasonable for many reasons that I could write a dissertation on, but it's just not possible to compare those things. So I don't think that there's any real way to come up with a standardized set of stories that would articulate for an entire organization, this is a small, this is a medium, this is a large, and this is an extra large. It should be very personalized to the group, to the team that's working those stories. Otherwise, it becomes very arbitrary and meaningless. And maybe
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you're echoing what I'm saying, and I know the idea of affinity estimation, even doing affinity estimation on a physical board like you demonstrated at the Agile Link meeting, that's a relatively new concept. So give it time, and we'll see where the market takes it. So I hope that doesn't happen, because what I liked about what you talked about, and really what you said is the best practice, is this idea of letting the estimates and the context which drives them, that's something that the team defines, and understand that the team is a function of the people on the team. And if you change even one person on the team, that changes the team. Some folks don't think that's how the world works, but I'm sorry to enlighten you, that's the way it works. So at that juncture, let it be dynamic, let it be owned by the team, move on, and roll out.
I think maybe in the old days, old Mr. Big Enterprise would have voted for standardized yardstick stories.
I think someone needs to go back to the archives and make a greatest hits, or I will do that of myself, because I don't think I ever said that. But for everyone who's out there who wasn't at the Agile Link and or was just listening, John, and here's my shameless plug and or solicitation to the Agile Link organizers. I thought what you did was awesome and was a great way to kind of set up the opportunity to talk about a larger body of work about ways to do more scientific measurement of development activities. Highlighting, if you're not tracking story points, which we've kind of, put to bed here, this is just not, it's a guess. What metrics should you track? And so I've said tonight a few times, I track cycle time. What does that mean? And also, how do you do it? And if you're doing that, what changes in terms of how you practice Scrum? There's this whole idea of talking about this idea of doing predictive statistical analysis to measure risk in accordance with statistical models to say, hey, we can develop the stories for this feature in this amount of time at a 68% confidence level, 95% confidence level, and that's all backed by stats. And then even going into like talking about change management techniques to say that, here we studied Pearson's coefficient, which is the correlation coefficient, and we've proven that over time there's no correlation between your actuals and your estimates. So it really statistically proves estimates don't matter, regardless of how good you think you are at it. So there's a whole body of work. The only thing that wasn't in your talk that I wish you had plugged was the whole underground cultural movement surrounding the no estimates hashtag, which if you aren't aware of it, you've never checked it out, just go to Twitter, search for it. I actually think there's good, there's bad, and there's ugly. Since throughout the calendar year, there's been a fiery debate all about no estimates and not estimating. Some of it, I think, professionally went over the line, but it's out there for everyone to debate. And there's a whole bunch of follow-on learning that is out there related to the topic you highlighted at Agile Link for those that are interested. So I would challenge the audience to go out and look on Twitter, read some blogs, and really follow through on your own opportunity for personal learning.
Jason, as a past presenter at the Agile 2012, 2011?
2012.
Do you recall when you were out there, and did you go to 2013? I can't remember.
I went to 2013 too. So
did you?
Interesting. It's an interesting opportunity. We could talk on the podcast about Agile conferences, because there's a term that I kind of was floating around with some of the folks at Agile 2013. Just kind of looking at the program there's what I call commodity Agile and or Scrum, which is real basic stuff. The Agile Alliance is a great organization. Scrum Alliance is a great organization, but at the end of the day, they're putting together programming and they're aligning it to an audience, and so they cater to a mass market because it's a very large conference.
Sure.
If you like conferences, there's a lot of smaller conferences out there that are more localized, where there's a more intimate learning experience that you could take advantage of. So there's an opportunity to have a whole discussion about that if you want to.
Well, what I was actually interested in was if you saw a lot of presentations that were supporting the no estimates mantra.
So
and then if the answer is no, propose that you and I work together for the Agile 2014 to put together a dog and pony show.
So a couple things. So first and foremost, Troy McGinnis, awesome. He won the Brickle Key Award, which is it's the award that the Lean Kanban North America Association, the Lean Kanban University Association gives out for innovation in the lean space. He put together kind of this idea of the whole Monte Carlo simulation engine that you can use to do your story analysis that I'm talking about.
Right.
It's available for download at focusedobjective.com. So there was a lot of talk at the Lean Kanban events this year about this idea of cycle time and doing forecasting based upon it to support no estimates. This is still a new topic. So, I mean, there were people that talked about it at Agile 2013, but not nearly at the same level of detail that they talked about at the Lean Kanban events. Troy was at Agile 2013. Lean Kit hosted him. He had a luncheon. He talked about the whole process of the methodology, but that was a lunch session, so it didn't get a lot of attendance. So I think it'll be interesting to see how the concept catches on. I have a 6-month case study that we've done on a project that talks about the accuracy of doing cycle time modeling and how you do predictive analysis with real 6 months of real data. So it's out there, and it's something that there's an opportunity to put something together. If you would like to do that, John, we could take that offline.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. One thing to kind of maybe wrap this up with, Jason, was I think it was Julie Smith again who stopped me near the at the end of the conference the other night, the meeting, and asked about what would I start off with in terms of categories or sizes. Would I do 2 sizes, 3 sizes, 4 sizes, 5 sizes? And what I told her was, doesn't matter. Pick whatever sizes, however many sizes, categories of sizes you want. What I told her was, look into and investigate the law of large numbers, or the probability theory around large numbers. And it goes back to what you were talking about, Jason, regarding cycle time. over a period of time, maybe your 6-month set of data shows this, I think that a team will start to see that the majority of things are zeroing in on some average in terms of what the estimate is that they are coming up with. So
yeah, and really from Troy McGinnis's body of work, he studied it, and he studied it significantly. I mean, he's a brilliant mathematician to the level that he's proven that if you have a consistent team, that story development cycle time will naturally normalize. And he's gone so far as to say you really only need between 10 to 15 data points to predict where the normalization will be. So effectively, if you've completed 10 to 15 stories, you've tracked cycle time on those stories, you have enough data to build a fairly accurate model for development cycle time, which you can then use to manage risk. So you don't need 6 months of data. You can basically do it with maybe about a sprint's worth of stories. So I think there's probably even for this podcast or other forums, they need to talk about how to do that, because it is a change, but once you understand the fundamental principles, it's very simple. And to the credit of the tool vendors out there, they've done their work to equip their products to make it very easy to really automate a transition. And at that juncture, teams can just look at their boards, pull a story, work it across the board. The tools will automatically track the cycle time and generate the data you need to do that analysis. LeanKit's taken them a step further in their enterprise product. They actually have partnered with Troy McGinnis. They built in his Monte Carlo simulator, where if you've got historical cycle time data on a board in LeanKit, you can run a forward model based upon the historical trends from that board. So you can say, if I have these stories in my backlog, I can predict at different levels of risk when they will be done. And that's it.
What's great about having the data and having tools like this that can take advantage of things like a Monte Carlo simulation is that it takes all of the emotion out of it. One of the things that I talked about at the presentation was humans are notoriously optimistic, and we actually have an optimism bias kind of built into us, which is really great for the human race, but it's terrible when it comes to business and planning and trying to plan for things. And it's great to see that even though we know that these things are a guess, at least to see some people putting some science and hard theory, hard math behind the stuff to try and firm it up in some small way, just to help us better understand what the data is that we're looking at and what it tells us and what it can help provide us information so that we can make better decisions as a team moving forward. And I'm a moron when it comes to math, Jason. I mean, I couldn't tell a Monte Carlo simulation from a blackjack simulation.
And free advice, and I'm not call it an unofficial plug. You have to have Windows, you have to have .NET installed, but go out to focusobjective.com, download the free Monte Carlo sim. You could use one of the sample boards that's built into it, or you could, reconfigure it to emulate whatever your workflow is or your value stream, and just start playing with it. It's amazing how you'll learn, and at that juncture, the simulation engine will do all the math for you. So don't let the math, and knowing there's a huge body of ideas about statistics, that shouldn't be a barrier for anyone to just try the cycle time thoughts.
Absolutely. And the statistics and the math behind this stuff, I think that can go a long way in a Scrum Master or an Agile leader or an Agile Transformers toolbox as part of how you help convince and transform organizations to show them, based on this data and based on these mathematic principles and laws and theories, this is why estimates have little value. So you're not going to just simply convince an executive or a manager with a bunch of hot air, right? They're going to need to see some hard data and math and science and probability and statistics.
Beautiful PowerPoint charts.
Yeah, that convinces you every time.
Again, today, the big Mac announcement, Apple announcement. Oh, the new the new numbers. Oh, if you haven't played with the new numbers and done your charts in numbers, oh my goodness, you'll never go back to Office again. It's so. All right, so I think we've murdered your presentation. I think it's dead. So I have plugs.
Good, because
close it out.
We're just about out of time. So let's go ahead and do our plugs/picks for the week, Jason.
Okay, so the thing I don't think, and this is where I'm going to call John, you're a hypocrite, and Amos is a hypocrite too, because we talk about we don't like governance. Okay, we don't like governance, but the thing that is governed on this podcast more than anything else are the rules about the plugs. You should be able to do whatever you want. No governance, okay, like everything else. No governance, no planning, no documentation, okay, whatever. So I have 4 plugs now. I told you I had 3, I have 4.
I love the new Jason Tice.
Yeah, so 4 plugs. I'll go first. You can close it out. So number 1, inspired by our chat tonight. And it is interesting if you're into how people think. Take some time, go to Twitter, type in no estimates, the hashtag, and just read the thread. It's entertaining. There was a spike in activity back around the Agile conference in August, but it goes throughout the year. I mean, just pick a thread. If you want to get involved, just start tweeting. Number 2, about this last time I was on the podcast earlier this year, before we had the infamous episode where I crashed it. So that goes back to February 2013. I had just started, actually, it was about halfway through the Management 3.0 book. If you haven't read this book, go read it. It's awesome. It talks about a lot of elements that need to be in place for effective Agile leadership, and really what the role of the enterprise should be, and how to support the system that allows people doing Agile development to be successful, but not going to the point of over managing the people who are being creative and innovative. It's a great read. It's entertaining. It has a companion website, management3.0.com, or if you want more ideas, go read Jurgen Appello, the author. Go read his blog, noop, noop.nl. Great blog. And 2 other ones I'm plugging. Another book came out recently called The Lean Mindset. It's about asking the right questions, and it is specifically from a lean context. So the reason I'm plugging this book is as part of the St. Louis Limited Work in Progress Society, which is a group that I'm involved with within the St. Louis metropolitan area. We're having a book club event, and that's a book that I'm facilitating book club activities for, and encouraging folks who are interested in learning about lean, read the book. We're going to have a get-together in November 2013 somewhere, do some fun book club stuff. If you want to read a great book, it's 156 pages, 5 chapters, a quick read. And if you're a coach or really anyone with influence, it will give you some very practical advice about how to ask questions to make sure that what you're doing is aligned to the purpose of your business. And last but certainly not least, we've mentioned it before, I do spend a lot of time helping to organize the St. Louis Limited Work in Progress Society. It's a lean group, talks about Kanban. We have monthly meetings in the St. Louis metro area, but actually just recently we published what I called the Lean Manifesto 2014, which is a couple things we want to try to do to grow and improve the group going forward into 2014. We're even going to do online content on our meetup site. So even if you're not in the St. Louis metro area, you technically could hopefully be able to participate and also get some value from the presentations and materials that we're going to post on our meetup site after we have a face-to-face meeting in the St. Louis metro area. So those are my 4 plugs for tonight's episode.
I wasn't counting, but there were 5.
No, there were 4.
No estimates. Twitter
no
hashtag
estimates.
Management 3.0.
Okay.
No.
Management 3.0 is one thing, because that's read the book, read the website, and go read the blog.
Okay, I'll give you that. Good picks, Jason. Nice job. My picks are a paltry 2, and I added 1 while Jason was talking because I looked up the Lean Mindset book, and it's from 2 of my all-time favorite authors, the Poppendykes.
Did I not plug the... Oh, man, I'm not thinking today. I apologize for not plugging the authors.
The other,
on, John.
Yeah, the other book from them that was instrumental in my education in Lean is Lean Software Development Agile Toolkit. It's a great book by Mary and Tom Poppendyke, and we'll have the links to these things, of course, in our show notes, as always. And the last one is, I don't normally do this because I don't want to deflect people away from our podcast, Jason, but there's something lately that I've been listening to on a regular basis, and it's the Wall Street Journal daily tech podcast. and it's like 3 or 4 minutes long, and it's perfect for quick in the morning when you're walking out the door. I mean, you can listen to it at any time, and they have a morning.
As a business guy, I'm not going to take any issue with anything from the street.
Okay.
So
it's a great high level, talking points sort of thing that's real brief, 3 or 4 minutes. Good
John,
for keeping you up to.
You are an enterprise architect. You just don't know it.
Maybe deep down inside, right?
Amos is one too. He's in greater denial than you are.
I'm in touch with my inside enterprise architect.
Well, at the end of the day, in this, and to use the language of Esther Derby, we're all change artists, and we're all helping people get by and helping people get better and improve.
I couldn't have said it any better. On that note, that's all we have time for today. Jason, thank you very much for being here and helping me reignite the podcast like the phoenix rising from the flames.
Hey, go read the Phoenix Project if you want another book to read. That's awesome too.
He just won't stop with the picks, folks.
I won't stop with the plugs. I got way too many. I got a backlog. We'll clear that out in a future episode. I need someone to groom it for me.
Jason, where can folks find out more about you?
So I have my social media dysfunction. I've been working on experiments lately, and I haven't had a chance to make it to my social media experiments. So I'm occasionally on Twitter at Tice Thoughts, or I have a non-functional website at jasontice.com.
Very good, folks. And you can find all of my tweets at jcsextro on Twitter. You can also find my podcast at johnsextro.com. And you can find the show's website, along with all of our great picks, all of the links to the interesting things that Jason and I discussed this evening, out on thisagilelife.com. Go out there, check it out. Thanks for listening, and keep living this agile life.